Uh, yeah, thanks, Karthik. Yeah, as you said, my growth in the career has been, I would say, um, it's been like quite lucky. I would say that maybe I was in the right places at the right time. Um, so in
Right,
terms
man.
of what
Yes.
we do at Trouble, it's a completely tangential career path I have taken after 20 years in the IT industry. Of course, we still build a lot of
Mhm.
technology. We are still building, apps and backend on AWS, and it's still a lot of technology involved. But the core domain itself,
Yeah.
is not a IT product. And what we are trying to do
Mhm.
now is essentially do our bit to actually change the way children learn and the way children grow up learning, so that when they enter the job market in 2030 or 2035, 5 years, 10 years from now,
Mhm.
the world of
Okay.
the economy and the job landscape is going to be completely different than what we know today. So I
Mhm.
believe
Mhm.
that our education system has been trying hard but struggling to catch up with the pace at which technologies has been changing and the way these technologies has been impacting every aspect of our life. Um, and my endeavor is to try and see how we can actually catalyze that change in the education system. Um, so we are focused on in the
Okay.
K-12 segment, trying to build, more
Mhm.
experiential products where children can actually learn uh, not just fundamentals of science and math, but also apply them to new areas like programming, robotics, artificial intelligence. Design is a big thing. Unfortunately, there's very little focus on design in our country. So we are trying to focus a lot on design very
Right.
early on, as opposed to take design as a
Mhm.
necessity in the job.
Okay. 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 So, but how do you do this? I believe that this is for the children, right? From the age group of 7 to, I don't know, what's the age group you're targeting?
We are
So for the
targeting all the way from 6 years of age to 18 years.
18
From
years.
the point they are in school,
Okay.
all the way
Okay.
up to the time they
Great.
enter college, right? By the time they
Enter
enter,
college. Okay. Great.
yeah, by the time they are in a position to actually make a decision to join a particular degree, we want them to be fully aware and
Mhm.
equipped in terms of making a decision on what career path they should choose, and then
Mhm.
choose their degree based on that.
Okay, great. So, yeah, so let's talk about your journey, Madhav. You have 20 years of experience, and I know you have got a lot of experience, interviewing people, and there are a lot of experience. So, why don't you talk about your journey? If you can just give me a few history about your career.
Sure, yeah. I would say my career has been a roller coaster ride. Um, in the sense that way back in 2000 I started with a testing career, and moved on to various roles. I have never seen one particular role as the thing that I should continue. For me, it was more of hey, what is that most important thing that a particular company needs at that point in time. So you would be surprised, I have handled roles all the way from being a test engineer to a worldwide technical support engineer to a development engineer, to an engineering leader. So I've handled roles across the gamut of engineering and support. That said, career itself has been more of a quest to learn continuously, right? Even this foray into education, it's like a whole new learning opportunity for me. So if we keep the objective of trying to learn constantly as as the key focus area, then whether you are in a development role, or whether you are in a testing role, or whether an automation role, it doesn't really matter. you know Broadly, I see careers as two different um, categories, where one obviously is hey, you are an awesome engineer, you can build awesome products, you can design awesome products, and you are an engineer at heart. The other one is the leadership, right? And very rarely, there are people who can combine both of these, together flawlessly, right? So
Right.
so
Right.
this is where I kind of cut over to a leadership position after about 10 11 years of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started focusing on a lot of learning and improvements, and working with mentors in improving myself in the leadership areas, right? So but
Okay.
at the heart, I'm still an engineer, but I try to you know uh, try to have an engineering mindset, but focus a lot more on people. I call it the three P's. One is you start with people, and then you have the process, and then you have the product, right? Never
Right.
start with the
Right.
product,
Right.
start with the people, and then you'll have an amazing product. So that's been my belief.
Oh,
And
yeah.
in terms of careers, yeah, as you said, I worked in some very large corporations early in my career, like Lucent Technologies and Samsung. I did spend a few years outside of the country as well.
Yeah.
But more or less, I stuck on to startups since 2008. So 2008 until 2020, I've been
Okay.
predominantly with startups.
Startups. Okay. So you've been specialist in the startups. So what is the difference between the the already a large company and a startup? So what is the difference there? Working in a already a well-established company like Samsung and Lucent, and working with a startup like Nutanix. When you joined Nutanix, it was at the earlier stage. Even Virident was at the earlier stage. So what is the difference?
Yeah. So I think the biggest difference is the pace, right? It's
Mm,
not about, hey, which company has better people. Like even large corporations have amazing people, amazing, technical leaders, amazing architects and all. But I think the one thing that differentiates large companies versus the smaller ones or the startups is the pace of innovation, right? And how does that matter to your own career is the pace at which you learn things and the pace at which you do things, right?
okay.
So it's like, you want to travel from here to some destination B. It could be like Delhi, Mumbai. It's like, whether you're going in a train or whether you're going in a flight, right?
Right.
I would say
Okay.
startup career is like, taking a flight to your destination
Right.
as opposed to taking a train.
Yeah, yeah. But startups would have a lot of challenges compared to the already well-established companies. So in your career, especially in the working in the startup, what was the challenges you faced? As in, why I'm asking is as in candidate and as an employee, I'm asking you because there'll be a lot of people who will be seeing this. So there will be people who will be working in larger companies, want to work in a startup companies. So what are the challenges you're faced in the startup companies?
I mean, startups actually have, I would say, multiple challenges, right, in various areas. One is obviously if the product is not out in the market yet, then
Mm,
knowing whether your product has the right market fit and whether startup will even make money to
make
pay
money.
your salaries a year later, that's the
Right.
biggest challenge. Uh,
Okay.
if you keep that challenge aside, then everything else in the engineering process, right? Like you won't have the right, like for example, be it people resources or be it tools or any other resources, you're always in shortage, right?
Right.
You always
Right.
have more to do than the people or other, material resources that you will ever have. So being, resourceful, being ingenuine in your approach,
Okay.
is the way you can, respond or react to those challenges. And
Mhm.
that essentially is what will elevate you in anyone's career,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And most of the people who ask me about career growth, I tell them, like, whether you are in a startup or in a large organization, you respond to the, urgent issues and important issues, right? It's like if you categorize what is urgent versus what is important versus what is urgent and important, if you are able
Yeah.
to prioritize in that way and you cater to things that are urgent and important, right? Whether it's a
Mhm.
startup or a large company, you will grow. The only
Right.
difference, the big difference with startups is that, like, you'll have many things that are both urgent and important.
So important.
right?
Yeah.
In a large organization, you will have things like, for example, you get a big customer issue. It's an urgent issue. It's both important, but how many times will you get those opportunities,
Okay.
right? In a small company, every day you are dealing with those kind of things where you have done your first deployment and then out of the box thing is not working, right?
Okay.
Every new
Yeah.
customer you deploy, you will get a new challenge to solve.
True, true, true. Yeah. So these are the things. So okay. So I basically I'm working with a lot of students and lot of job seekers at this moment, and I've been kind of not training them, but I've been helping them to how to attend interviews and how to search for the right decision makers. It's very important. My specific focus is on reaching the decision makers.
Mm.
So if you can give me a few things, like how would a job seeker, he's like searching for a job now and he wants to reach out to you. So how does he reach out to you? Basically, we have LinkedIn now, we have, a lot of media, a lot of networking sites coming in. You are a complete stranger and somebody wants to reach out to you. What do you think is the, best way to reach out to the right decision makers?
Um, Again, I think there it is very subjective.
Mhm.
Not every person could be approachable directly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
if you're asking about how do I reach a company and how do I make
Yes,
sure that my resume reaches the right manager
yes.
who is looking for hiring,
Mhm.
again I would say there is no standard answer, very honestly,
Mhm.
because large organizations, for example, will have systems in place where no matter uh, whether you are going through a direct contact or not, you still have to apply through a system. Of
Yeah,
course, there could be
absolutely.
systems where you can tag an existing employee as a referral, and that may get higher priority. Uh,
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, if your resume has to reach a manager, it has to, in small companies it's a lot easier. In startups, the talent acquisition team does some amount of filtering and some amount of processing before it reaches manager. But in small companies, I would say going through a referral is your best bet,
that's right.
right?
Okay, okay.
Going through a referral who can talk a few sentences about you, who knows you, and a person who can refer you is the best way to get into start.
Yeah,
And that's where relationships matter a lot,
oh,
right?
definitely, yes.
One of the thing that I have always told people, and I always try to live to my word, is maintain relationships. Whether you are leaving a job or you're staying in a company, companies and jobs are transient, right? You keep changing them, but
Right.
relationships are not,
Not, yeah.
right? So you focus on relationships so that when 2 years later you may not know, but then the person whom you had worked with in some other company could refer you in some other
Yeah,
job.
right,
So
right.
relationships and referrals work best in any situation, be it large company or small company. And if you don't have a referral, then
Mhm.
obviously, a good resume, a good short resume
Yeah,
will really help, right? So this is where your resume writing skills will come into picture, where
picture.
how can you convey, I mean, this is a dirty secret. Even
Mhm.
me as a manager,
Okay,
my mind somehow gets the, uh, all humans have biases, right? The
right,
moment we
right.
see the first half page of a first page, right? Like
Yes,
we see half
yes.
of the first page, we more or less start creating some
Some
visual picture
bias.
of what this candidate could offer, could bring onto the table, and
Right.
how much crisply you can present your career in the first page itself matters a
Yes,
lot,
matters a lot.
right?
Yeah.
Everything else is immaterial, honestly. I mean, that is how I have screened a lot of profiles. And if
No,
my
no, that's how it is.
right, if the first few lines sound very interesting and impressive, then we will start to read the second half of the page and the third half of the page. The first half of the page, if it
Right,
contains very
right, right.
standardized statements, very standardized summaries, that doesn't highlight the career achievements, be it 1 year person or 10 years person, your biggest career achievement should be in the first 10 lines, right? So start from there.
So it's they say that it's like your attention, yeah, your there's a survey, where they have told that your attention span to look at the resume is just like 7 seconds. In 7 seconds, you make a decision. So that's what you said, the first page makes a difference, especially the first half. You go through it and you make a decision, to go further. Okay. So now, let's go to, career progression. So, Murli, how do you progress in a career? There are a lot of job seekers, a lot of candidates who've been asking me how, a lot of friends of mine, how do I progress in my career? When do I switch careers? So is there any some rule, like, I have to switch career in, like, switch jobs in 2 years or 3 years or 1 year? So, if you can give me some tips on that.
Yeah, definitely. Again, honestly, there is no, there is no good term, right? In
Yeah.
terms of, like, 3 years is the best or 5 years is best, or, some people can be in the same company for 20 years and still amazingly grow, right?
Yes.
Um, Me and my brother are perfect examples, right? I have switched probably like 6 companies in 20 years, but my brother has probably switched only 3 companies in the last 20 years, right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
with his current company, he's been there for 11 years. So,
Wow. Mm.
so it's not about, it's not about whether changing companies will give you a raise in your career growth or it will give you a raise in your salary. It's about embracing change no matter where you are. You could be in the same company, you could be in a different company. How proactively you are able to appreciate, the ongoing changes both in the industry, in the economy, and in your own company's, product portfolio or whatever, right? And the other thing is embracing change in terms of roles, right? uh, because gone are the days where one person spending 10 years in a large company used to have, special respect, right? They will obviously have
Right.
respect, but it no
Right.
longer has a special status, because the
Mm.
pace of innovation and the pace of technological advancement have changed so much that even the latest of technology could be relevant in 2 years or 3 years, right? Even if it is not irrelevant, it will be probably obsolete, right? So ultimately, it all boils down to the value you create, right? So if you're able to create higher value every year, whether you're in the same company or in a different company, you should, embrace that change. Be it a change in the role, like, are you able to, let's say you're an engineer, can you create higher value for your company by becoming a better engineer? Or if you're able to create a better value for your company by actually becoming, let's say, a product manager, right? Then you will automatically grow in
Okay.
your career,
Mm.
right? If you are a
Okay.
hardcore engineer and you want to stick to engineering, for example, then how are you able to create more value? Because, I'll just take one more minute here. Freshers
Mm.
who come out of colleges these days, the pedigree colleges, are so good
Right.
in terms of programming, and they're
Mm.
already exposed to the latest of technologies. So I always tell to experienced people, especially, how are you better than a fresher who is coming out of college beyond knowing the product, right? Is the only difference between you and a fresher knowing the product and knowing the code? Or are you able to do better architecture? Are you able to do better, product design? Are you able to, come up with better, ideas for, sales in the product? So if you're not able to create that differentiation, then in companies will always look for more younger and younger people who come with a lot more energy and passion and newer technology exposure, right? In 10 years from your, starting of your career, after 10 years, if you are unable to create a big differentiation in terms of, not just technical value, but in terms of people value, leadership value, process value, then you
Yeah.
stop growing.
True, true, true. Great. So, okay. So, yeah, we learned about the career progression. There are people who wants to know about, like, how do I plan an interview? It's a very simple one.
Mhm.
How do I prepare for the interview? Or, what is the interviewer expecting from the candidate? If you are an interviewer, what do you expect from the candidate? If he's coming for say about test engineer kind of role. So what do you expect from him? Like, apart from the technical things, I know you'll be asking about technical, but apart from that, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it also a lot on the company and the interviewer and the interview process. For example, Google has very very well defined, Google, Facebook, all these companies have very well defined processes, both for the preliminary rounds and the advanced rounds. But very few companies really follow to that degree, right? On in general, a lot of the job hirings depend on you know two or three or four panel members, who could be doing technical interviews, especially in high tech world. HR rounds and all are, more of informative sessions rather than an interview. If
Right.
someone has reached the HR stage, it could be more or less, if something is breaking at that point, it's probably salary expectations or things
Salary
like that, right?
expectation.
but
True. True.
but before that, if you have to really cross the hurdle, then there
Uh-huh.
are two things, right? One is obviously the core technical metal in terms of, you
Yeah.
know are you living up to the expectations of
Yes.
the interviewer in terms of technology, in terms of, coding knowledge or testing knowledge or automation knowledge, whatever it is. And there also it
Okay.
is quite subjective, very honestly. Not every interviewer is well trained in many organizations. I've seen this, that interviewers are not trained to handle candidates well. And
Yes. Yes.
unfortunately, the bad part about interview is that it almost seems like most of the companies see interview as a one way evaluation, right? Whereas in my opinion
Right.
and my experience, an interview is a two-way conversation.
Too big.
So for a candidate to really do well in interview beyond technology, I would say ask more questions, genuine questions, not for the sake of asking questions, but
Yeah.
ask more genuine questions. And a interviewee or a candidate can only ask genuine questions when the candidate has done enough homework and gone, right? Homework about what the company is, what the products are, who their customers are, right? Uh, any company you take, you will find enough information on the web. You go to some
Right.
review sites, you will even find reviews of, if you go to Glassdoor, for example, you will find reviews
Mhm.
about the work culture, the employees, the leader,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of that. So one way to engage well in an interview and increase your prospects of being selected is by asking genuine questions about the role, about the team, and about the challenges that the person is expected to solve once he or she comes on board, right?
Okay. Okay.
Um, which means that there has to be enough homework done on what the role
Done.
is and what is expected.
Okay.
What I've seen is that this is where most of the candidates falter. That because if they're like in a situation where they're like looking for a job very actively, they would have applied in 10, 20, or 10, whatever companies, right? They go to different companies and
Yes.
will not spend enough time to research on all these. And
Correct.
that is where, the person who has done more homework and more research.
Mm-hmm.
And it is psychologically proven that when you actually ask more questions, you actually take control of the discussion,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So a candidate who is very passive and only answers to questions and doesn't ask questions actually has lower chances of being selected in an interview.
So when you said questions, so I thought like if somebody has some questions, then probably they can jump in, they can ask some questions. So before we, yes, there are few people who wants to ask you something. Okay, so before that, I wanted to know, you were like, in 2001,
Mhm.
there was a thing happening, and there are a lot of jobs going off, and there are a lot of kind of a coming up. Like for example, there was a boom. Okay, it was a financial crisis. It was a recession, and I was also a part of it during that recession. I had to take 50% cut in my salary, and a lot of things happening. So,
Hmm.
how did you overcome, Murli? I know you have gone through that phase, so somebody wants to know about
Uh, Honestly, if I say, maybe I was lucky,
it.
right? Uh,
Okay,
but
okay,
the more deep answer to that is, are you in a technology that is essential? Are you working in a company that is anti-fragile, what we call in the industry, right? Like, you may take a pay cut, but does that mean that it's going to impact your career growth forever, right? Even the best of the best person for example, in current situation, COVID, the way people are getting laid off has nothing to do with their capability, right? You take companies
Right.
like
Right.
airline companies or hospitality or hotels. I mean, it's not their fault, right? It's not their
Uh,
fault that they were in those companies at that point in time. It's just that the economy or the impact of like for example in 2008 and 9 financial crisis, anybody who was in the financial sector, real estate especially, especially in the US, the real estate crash was so bad that any companies that were into developing software or working for the real estate industry were like big time impacted. It is not their fault,
yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
But that said, the whole if the discussion is around how do we embrace that change, that hey, this is inevitable but we have to really survive, this is where people need to understand that a particular, well, for example, a person who is working in a networking job, or is a Java developer, or Android mobile developer, don't get hung up in a particular domain, right? The way I was able to thrive through even the hardest times is being in companies or in technology areas that are very relevant. For example, if you say 2001 2 time frame, it was very early in my career, and very honestly I would say that was just luck, that
Yeah.
I was in a company which was actually scaling up in Bangalore, right? Though hundreds and thousands of people were getting laid off in the US, that was the time a lot of IT was coming into Bangalore. So that was more of natural scale up. But in 2008, it was more real,
Yes.
right? That we could feel the heat. I was more aware of the
Mhm.
issues that were happening across, and how it could have impacted our careers. But if you really look at the time frame, that was when mobile development was at its peak, in the sense that Android was launched in 2007 and in
Yes.
2008. Before that, all my career roles were into deep networking and all of that. And then I cut over to virtualization. If you really see, VMware, started growing big time in 2007, 8, and that was when in India it was scaling up. So I took that pain to learn, virtualization on my own, and then apply that virtualization skills and knowledge way back in 2008 in a job role or a profile that did not require it, right? So I was into automation. There was no need for me to learn virtualization and apply, but I still learned that and applied, and that became a unique offering. It became a niche. So
Yeah.
essentially, how are you embracing the latest and greatest of technologies? And even though your role doesn't demand officially, are you able to leverage some new technology and apply it and differentiate yourself from the rest? Then when there is you know, when there is a need to lay off people, or when there is a need to, let's say keep only 20% of the workforce, are you in that situation where you're offering something so different that they're forced to retain you, right? And it all boils down
Yeah.
to, again, two words: are you a constant learner, and are you
Mhm.
willing to embrace change,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes. That's very important. You need to embrace the change. So yeah, we have. I think we have Jayant here who wants to talk to you. Let me.
Hello.
Yeah. Jayant.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me, Murli?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead, Jain.
So, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you, Jain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, considering the current situation, most of the talents are available in the market. So, in terms of identifying the right talents, what are your measures, which you will take into consideration to hire the best talent? Because the numbers of talents are ample today.
Right.
Yeah, so that is what, how do you identify the best talents?
Yeah, I mean, that is a good question, because, of course, this particular scenario has, led to surplus supply. But this was always true, right? That anytime you post a job requirement in the market, even if you explicitly say that, hey, we are only looking for, let's say, a junior level person, you would still get applications from senior level people. And in such a situation, that would only go up, right?
Right.
Earlier, if you were getting, 5 resumes for a post that were not, directly relevant, or that were, overqualified than what a company requires or can pay, in such a situation, it could be 15 or 20, right? There's a 3x, 4x jump in that. And that makes the job even more difficult for hiring managers and the, talent acquisition team to shortlist the right people and to be able to, filter through the whole set of resumes that have come in. Um, the first step, if you're able to get through to the point where you have at least shortlisted 5 or 6 people for the discussion, that is where the role of a hiring manager comes in, right? And starting at that point is where, we have to discuss a lot of behavioral aspects. And my way of hiring candidates in whether this situation or in normal situations has always been, what can a candidate offer beyond a particular defined role, right? I'll give a simple example. In today's situation, there is a dire consequence for many companies and startups, right? And even let me take the example of Oyo, for example, right? Like Oyo's business is impacted to such a great extent that Oyo has decided to pivot, their product in such a way that they will focus a little more on domestic market. And let's assume pivot is the word that we are focused on. In the new scheme of things, where company has moved from their original product or original strategy to a new product or new strategy, then the way I would hire people is, in future, if such a scenario emerges, who are the people who can adapt to such a changes, and who are the ones who can learn new things at a much faster rate, and who are the ones who are willing to even embrace that need that, hey, I was a Java developer, but now new situation, demands that I have to learn Kotlin. Can I learn Kotlin in 1 month or 2 weeks, and then start developing something in Kotlin? So, and this can be understood well through an interview by seeing in how many such scenarios in the past they have demonstrated that quick learning and quick change.
Yeah.
And this is where behavioral interviews come into picture, that if the manager is looking for real examples of where a candidate has demonstrated adoption to new methods or new processes or new technologies or whatever it is, and if that candidate is able to convey that very clearly during an interview process, convey that, hey, look, this challenge came up in 2005, and then I stepped up to the challenge, and in 2 weeks I learned, back in those days, if it was C++, I moved on from C++ to Java in under 2 weeks and helped my team or manager develop this new application and then moved on. So behaviorally, can we dig deeper and understand that a person is capable of learning and changing and thriving in the new world?
Okay. And one more point: is it a Is it a change of choice to an hiring manager now because of the number of applicants are more?
Can you repeat that? I didn't completely get that question.
Yeah. So if you considering the current situation, the number of applicants are more, and now hiring manager has the choice to pick the best one.
Right.
So considering the current situation, so my question is it a change in the choice of an hiring manager who is hiring a person, because the same hiring manager has hired the person last year? Okay, due to various reasons, the candidate has declined. But in the current situation, if hiring managers say he is not the right fit, is it because of the current situation of the business where hiring manager has a choice to pick the right one?
I'm not sure if I'm fully following the question, but let me rephrase it. Let me rephrase the question to make sure that I have understood it right. Are you saying that now that there are more candidates in the market,
yeah,
and if I'm going to hire person A versus person B, then, and if I had, let's say, rejected person A, even a year ago,
correct,
and should I hire that person now, or should I only look for person B?
correct.
Yeah, I think
But last year scenario was A and B were shortlisted
Got it. Mm-hmm.
because of the number of demands to fulfill.
Got
But
it.
considering the current situation, the number is also dipped down. Open demands.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is definitely the case. I mean, now, any hiring manager who says, he or she has a open position, they would be at a demanding end, right? It is like
Yeah.
now their option pool has increased much larger. So they obviously get to choose the best. And this is a scenario where, the candidates are probably not even in a situation to, demand,
Yeah.
pay raise, right?
So it's more of an employer's market.
An employer's market, right?
Yeah.
And in such a situation, obviously, as you said, manager has the full option to hire the best at and not even offering like whatever the candidate demands in terms of salary. If the company has a standard, if the culture is good, that hey, we will not worry about the current market, we will rightfully pay what the candidate deserves, so on, well and good. Otherwise, if a company is starving for cash and they're not able to pay, you get very good candidates even at lower salary
Yeah.
scales at this point. Yeah.
Thanks, Murli.
Sure, Jain. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. So we have one more person, Aman Jain. He's asking he has gone through a training for 6 months after getting from college, and he's been put on wait from January 20 because of no projects in the company. So what should be the best to do as of current situation? He's an MTech. He's been continuously searching for a job. He's not able to. If you have any suggestion, tips, maybe for him.
Yeah. I think the job market was very tough even before COVID, especially for freshers. So the best bet to get through any job was through campus. And if the person is already in a job, and if the question is that, hey, now I'm in a job, but I'm on bench or like I'm in a waiting period, then what do I do? Then I would say, the best way to spend time right now is to continue to learn, right? Um, Continue to learn, and there are lots of good freelancing websites. Irrespective of whether you earn some money or not right now, I would say take some real projects that are available in the freelancing world and spend time, because when you do, what happens is when you're sitting to do a course online, be it from Coursera or Udemy or something like that, there's only so much of time you can spend actively learning, right? After watching the videos continuously for 3 days, 4 days, you'll probably write a few programs or do some UX designs. There's some tipping point where it starts to get bored unless you are really in a challenging project. That is where I would say get into the world of freelancing or get into the world of open source, and pick up some project that has some value. It may not be value in terms of money, but it has value in terms of learning, right? So best advice I would give to whoever has time in this situation is continue to learn. And in terms of jobs also, it is not that all industries are going down, right? Like if you really look at the agro market, the biopharma market, the medical industry, the education sector, there are various industries that are actually thriving now. Like for example, even companies like Big Basket, companies like e-commerce companies which are into B2C segment, they're all thriving right now in this scenario. I mean, Amazon stock has not been higher than what it is now ever, right? So be open to embracing that kind of a change where you're now looking at, you could have been in, let's say, in hospitality. Let me say, for example, if you're in a developer in Oyo, and if you have been impacted, then don't assume that you need to find another job in a similar domain, right? Don't be on that quest to find a job in a similar domain, because that is a not a fruitful search at this point in time. Look at what is, like for example, agri-tech. Any startup that is into agriculture, into direct supply chain of agriculture, logistics is thriving. Go and look for a job in those new sectors which are created, which have are in demand because of this situation.
Right. And I think freelancing will be the new norm moving forward, at least for a few months or years coming by. There are a lot of projects. You will have opportunities for freelancers who, or maybe contractors. I think, whatever it is, even for 2-3 months or 6 months project, I think they should be able to take it up and learn from it and move forward. So we have one more person, Bala, who wants to ask you something. Okay, I have 3 years of experience in SQL and MSPI, and I've learned VLSI to switch my domain.
Mhm.
So is it a right decision to change or to continue in the same field? I feel personally, if I'm applying a job in VLSI domain, having different domain experience, is it feasible to go forward? So it's
Yeah.
changing, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot more product companies are open to this change, right? If you are in a services world, this may not be, very well entertained, mainly because, services sector usually has some clients, where they want some person who's coming with ready experience that can be leveraged to, immediately impact a new role, right? Whereas in the product world, changing in domain is definitely encouraged. Um, if you can show that you have core strengths, right? Whether it is VLSI or whether it is you are in a DB SQL kind of world, the core strength is still engineering, right? What does that mean? Engineering means it is like not about, hey, whether you are a Java programmer, do you have that problem solving abilities, right?
Right.
Do you have that ability to think differently when the problem is thrown at you and solve that? So if you're able to demonstrate that core strengths, you can always switch the domains. And I would in fact encourage, based on my own career experience and how I have grown. For example, when I was in Lucent Technologies, I was working in layer 2, layer 3 networking. And when I joined Samsung 4 years later, I actually moved into semiconductors, right? So it was from completely different switch. It was like there was no correlation between working on semiconductors versus working on layer 2, layer 3 switching, which was protocols. So that actually helped me because later in my career I could draw parallels into when the world of mobiles came into picture. I could draw a lot of parallels and make big impact in my roles. Uh, but the switch is a little harder if you don't have, as I said, references who could, for example, do you know people who are in companies like Brocade or Intel or any other companies that are doing this kind of a job, like Huawei Technologies? Switching to these domains becomes easier if you have referrals who can say that, hey, this person may not have VLSI background, but is an awesome engineer. If somebody can make that one statement, then you can crack the rest of it in the interviews.
I think, yeah, that's, so we have, okay. I think that anybody wants to ask questions.
Hello. Hello,
Yeah, go ahead.
Murali?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to check on, the current e-commerce market opportunities. Considering the current market, because most of the buying and selling platforms is known as e-commerce, right? So most of the applications are happening through that. So switching a recruiter from a semiconductor to e-commerce side. So what is the opportunities that you could see in next 5 years, Murali?
Yeah, again, see, whether you're in recruitment or engineering, it all boils down to your past demonstrations of being able to adopt to a new field or new technology, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, if you are a recruiter let's say networking or semiconductors, and you want to move to becoming a recruiter in the e-commerce world, then it again comes down to how much homework are you doing to be able to understand how e-commerce segments work.
But how would be their acceptance if we apply for it? Most of the filtration happens on the relevant experience and the domain knowledge and the company which a person applies from. Because if I have to apply to Amazon, they prefer to have a person who comes from Flipkart or Walmart or Redbus or
Yeah.
most of the e-commerce companies. So I being a person from a semiconductor company, so if I have to apply to Walmart, so what could be the chance of my profile getting shortlisted?
Again, I don't know if the answer will be a perfect answer, but as I said, again, if you go directly, the chances could be slim because the competition could be much higher, and anybody coming from a Flipkart trying in Amazon will obviously get the first first preference. That said, again, if you know someone in the team, or if you can go through some employee referral, right, that is your best bet, right? It again, we are coming back to the same point that anytime you are trying to switch a domain, or anytime you are trying to switch to something that you do not have the perfect background or experience, referrals are your best bet.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Murli.
Sure.
Okay. So I think we will, there are no more questions. So yes, thank you so much, Murli. I think we are at the end of the webinar. So thank you so much for coming by and answering questions and talking about your journey. And I personally wish you all the best in your startup, Prabha. And I'm sure, yeah. So if you start hiring Murli in future, so what are the positions you're looking at, and what kind of people you're looking at? So probably this webinar would give you some ideas.
Yeah. So we have already built a small team. So right now I have a 7-member team, which we have built over the last 5 months. Again, all these were, went out, into expos, found people. And right now my own network is so large that when I post something on LinkedIn, I get like, 25 resumes in one day. Right. I think that is the power of networking.
I think, the first, yes. The
think,
initial
right now we are very
stage,
honestly,
I think through references.
Yeah, right now we are going very slow, but if things turn around, if things recover in a couple of months, then we are definitely looking at people who are good at AWS backend, because we have our entire technology stack developed on AWS, and we have our own mobile apps. So in terms of technology, that is of course in the education, we have like completely different set of requirements where we are looking for instructional designers. We are looking for people who are good in videography, people who are good in multimedia, because we're going to do a lot of educational videos. But coming back to core technology, yeah, somebody who's like, done good development on AWS stack, and somebody who's done React Native, because we use React Native for our web development, mobile development. So these are some of the things that we would definitely look forward to, as things turn around.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Murli, and once again, and thank you, attendees. Thank you, Jayant. Thank you, everybody,
Thanks, Karthik.
to participate. Yeah, thank you. And yes, so we will probably we'll have one more, few more leaders coming in, joining my webinar next week. So we started with Murli. Hope we have a success journey throughout this year. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Karthik. Wish you also good luck as you embark on this new world.
Yes. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.